Some people have tried to calculate what it costs to train the Llama 3 70B. Going by like standard H100 rates, it would cost you about $4 to $5 million to train from scratch.
4 to 5 M.
Million.
Yeah. Okay. Welcome to Practical AI, everybody. This is our second season. I'm Jeff Northrup. I'm with Peter Lynn. Practical AI is brought to you by Pocket AI. Pocket AI is a tool used to perform surgery on your models to make them better. While everyone today is talking about RAG and refinement, Pocket AI allows you to edit the weights in your model directly. Peter, today I wanted to ask you a little bit about the process of refinement and in particular, the cost of refinement. And I guess I'll tee it up this way. There have been statistics out there about the success of models, right? Generally speaking, building an LLM or building a model is a certain percent successful, and it could be as low as like 13%, like 80+% of models fail. But the last couple of years, we've got sort of a different approach, and that is OpenAI or Anthropic comes to you with this behemoth, the starter kit, essentially, and goes to a big corporation and says, you don't have to train a model. You don't have to fail the way, we learned all that. Here's our model. You take it as your base set and refine it down to your specialty. So, what can you tell us about that whole process? It's relatively new. What does it cost? How successful is it? Is it the way things are going to happen in the future?
Yeah, so I would say in terms of success, no one really knows yet because it is still pretty new. And so far, it's really only just language models, right? Because it's not like you can refine vision models yet or multimodal models. That's in the pipeline and in the works. It'll come in the future. It's anyone's guess when that'll happen, but right now it's just language models. So really, when you talk about refinement, and in terms of cost, you think about one, you gotta create your prompt data, so your prompt and response, and you'll need anywhere from thousands to tens of thousands, or ideally a couple million. Some of the research done by open source has shown that as low as like 10 to 15,000, you can get a pretty good result on a benchmark. So the example was they took, so they actually fed prompts to GPT to produce a synthetic data set of like several thousand. They took that and then they applied it to Llama 2, which is called the LoRa approach, where you add on additional layers, you do some training, and it magically gets much better results than just Llama 2. So that was the alpaca model. So they took Llama, they refined it, and I think the original blog slash article was like, oh, hey, we were able to use GPT to generate synthetic data, use this LoRa approach, and we produce alpaca that scored much better than the vanilla llama 2.
Okay, so I know you got more to go there, but a lot of times when I'm thinking refinement, this might not be the correct way to think about it, but I'm anticipating that I'm taking something broader and I'm narrowing it down into a more specific use case. Like I take your LLM and now I can do credit card fraud, right? Or whatever, right? Something like that. But in that example, it sounds like they're taking, they're going big to big, right? They're just synthetic data to make another a general LLM. Is that accurate?
It's taking the large model, so GPT-3 or free whatever, and then you're just making it more specialized to one use case or two use cases.
Oh, so in the alpaca example, they did have a specific use case that they were driving that towards.
I don't remember if they did. I think they were just trying to score better on like one benchmark or two benchmarks.
Okay. So again, it was broad to broad in that instance, but with way fewer prompts, smaller model, whatever.
Right. So they use GPT to generate synthetic data, and then they took Llama 2 and said, okay, we'll benchmark vanilla Llama 2, we'll do this additional training, and then we'll benchmark it again, and then we can do an apples to apples comparison.
Got it.
Which
Okay.
it wasn't really apples to apples. It
Apples
was
to alpaca.
yeah.
All right, so back at the ranch then with these these LLMs and refining them, generally speaking, do we know how much it costs to do that?
No one has really published an actual finding, but so you got to pay for the cost of creating your prompt data. You got to pay for your employees, and then you got to pay for the actual training, which is the number of tokens, and then the number of epochs you're going to train. And then after that, the cost of actually running your customized, refined model. So those are the basic parameters for the cost. Now, it's hard to say what it will actually cost because you have to apply it to your specific environment. So if you've got like if you already have developers, well, then you're already paying for them. So is it additional cost? Well, yes and no, because if they're going to work on this new thing and not something else, then there is an actual monetary cost to allocating those resources to this other thing. Then there's creating the data, there's managing the data, there's a cost with that. And then the actual OpenAI cost of submitting your data, having them refine it and train it, and then doing it multiple times until it gets to the point where you think, okay, yeah, this is good enough.
And I think like you were telling me the pricing, it's like it's generally by tokens with these firms, right? And it's like input per million tokens, output per million tokens. Explain that a
Yeah,
little bit, like how that pricing works.
yeah, it's based on tokens. So it's like a certain number of cents per X tokens. Right now I think it's still fairly affordable. Um, but it's anyone's guess, right? Like it could go up or it could go down. In theory, it should go down as better hardware comes out from NVIDIA. So if NVIDIA comes out with new DGX that's like 10 times more efficient and 10 times faster, then you would expect to see the price drop like 5 to 8 times.
Unless they increase the size of the models by 5 to 8 times by then.
Right. So again, it's a
Open up
seesaw.
that, yeah, open up that context window, right?
Yeah.
Let's go even higher. Okay, so all these companies out there, all these, banks and insurance companies and whatever, they're doing these projects and they're partnering with Microsoft and Anthropic and Google and do you think that they do you think that they're going to end up abandoning this because of cost someday, or do you think that it'll stay competitive and it'll keep companies like Visa or whatever, Allstate out of the LLM business in terms of making their own models?
I mean, I don't know. Right now the cost, so some people have tried to calculate what it costs to train the Llama 3 70B. Um, and just going by like standard H100 rates, it would cost you about $4 to $5 million to train from scratch.
4 to 5 M.
Million.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So could a Citibank or a Visa do it? Yeah, they could. I mean, for them, $4 million is not that big. Do they have the data? No, they don't. And so again, it goes back to the data is the secret sauce. If you have the data that Meta created or the data that OpenAI created, then it's just a matter of running it, just renting AWS or Azure time, and you upload your data and you train it.
Okay. So last question then. If we kind of click into that, we were talking about refinement, so taking the larger Anthropic model and refining it. I'm going to refine it though with my data,
Yeah.
right? And we've already talked a little bit about how you don't have to give your data to Anthropic or OpenAI. You can keep that, right? Um, if I was able to use my data to refine my model, what component or what parts of the original model do I really need in the future to run a smaller model that does just what I was refining with? You know what I mean? It's like
Well,
you
so
use this
yeah,
big superset, right?
you can. So if you start with GPT-4 and you've spent 8 months refining it, you're pretty much stuck to GPT-4. Because when 5 comes out and it's different, you now have to do the same process with GPT-5.
Will they
Because
let you stay on for?
they will, because you're paying money.
Yeah.
So they'll keep taking your money. But if you want the latest and greatest and best, right? So let's say in GPT-6, they go, oh, we've got a whole new tokenizing approach that's even better than 3 and 3, 5, and 4. Well, so now you have to redo refinement because
Mm.
your same data maps to different tokens now. And so now you have to re-spend the money that you spent refining 4 to 6.
But hopefully you figured out your data set at that point and you should be you'd be a step ahead, right?
Well,
Okay.
in theory. But again, because how the system tokenizes affects how well it learns something, it could be that your training data needs to be adjusted. So it works well with the new tokening mechanism.
Got it.
So it's not like if it worked on 4, it's gonna just magically work with 0 changes on 6.
It's funny, the more things change, the more things stay the same. And it seems like everything in technology always ends up with that final statement. The answer to the question is it depends.
Yep. Yeah, it always depends. Right? Because like every limitation with 3 can be traced to the tokens.
Yeah. Well, this is a good conversation. The refinement universe right now seems to be expanding rapidly. And I can only imagine that we will be talking about metrics around OpenAI, ability to refine with that. What percentage of models are working with OpenAI versus Anthropic versus Google in refinement metrics going forward?
Yeah, honestly, I doubt that we'll see metrics for a couple years.
Hmm,
Just because, I use Azure and Copilot button is on Azure now. So whenever I click the Copilot button to ask, like, hey, I got this error out of the last, what, 3, 4 weeks, I've asked it maybe 4 or 5 times each week, and I've gotten 0 good responses
hmm,
so far. And clearly, Microsoft is training on their support ticket bugs, the errors, and all that. And if they can't do it and
yeah.
they can't get good results, then clearly it's not as easy as they claim it is, right? Because if it worked, when I click Copilot and say I got this error, I should have gotten a good valid response, but I got 0.
Well, it's a fun topic. I'm sure we'll see more of it. Peter, thanks. Good chatting with you again. As always, ask us questions. We'll try to respond and try to keep bringing good, interesting topics your way. Take care, everybody.